What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today we continue to talk a little bit about what the Jets are trying to do as a new brand, a new regime, a new culture, and some of the areas specifically that I think new head coach Aaron Glenn is going to target for improvement with this new roster and with this new culture. Listen, I have been telling you the entire time, ever since we started Jets Latest back in free agency, that they have been targeting young guys, guys that have flashed, guys that are coachable, and guys that are, on short deals to provide some cap flexibility, kind of grow together and grow around Justin Fields. Well, let me put some stats around that because the New York Jets actually had the biggest roster turnover in the entire NFL since last year. Only 58% of the roster from last year is back right now for the Jets as we kind of continue through OTAs. That is the lowest percentage in the NFL. Other teams with kind of low percentage of guys that are coming back are the Tennessee Titans, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Vegas Raiders. It is important to note that 3 of the 4 lowest kind of roster return or the most turnovers are teams with new head coaches for this season. Obviously, the Jets with Aaron Glenn, the Raiders with Pete Carroll, and of course, the Tennessee Titans as well. So I think that is important to note that it's not just me saying they're bringing in new guys. And yes, they went in a different direction with some key guys like an Aaron Rodgers, letting CJ Mosley go, even kind of on special teams. But it is truly a clean slate. Remember, there is now only one player on this roster that is older than 30 years old, and it's backup quarterback Tyrod Taylor, right, to kind of be that mentor, a good kind of veteran in the locker room, in the quarterback room for some consistency behind Justin Fields, but not necessarily a threat to Justin Fields. I want to say also, check this out, last year, the 2 teams with the greatest roster turnover were the Chargers and the Commanders. And ironically enough, both of them had new head coaches there, Quinn and Harbaugh, and both of them made the playoffs. So this kind of clean slate can lead to a rapid turnaround, right? There is always a team that goes worst to first in the NFL. There are a lot of teams that have new head coaches, and I have been talking about how having a new head coach that played for that franchise really helps instill in a new brand pride for the organization. We are seeing it all over the place. Dan Campbell in Detroit, D'Amico Ryans in Houston, Harbaugh with the Chargers, Vrabel with the Pats, right? And even Aaron Glenn with the New York Jets. So this kind of turnover, this kind of clean slate, this new brand and new culture is definitively something that is intentional with the Jets. Another thing, I talked about it yesterday when we had Aaron Glenn's quotes on Cisco, or earlier in the week, right? How Cisco was kind of a ball hawk, someone who can make turnovers, make plays on the ball, and how that was a need area. Now, not only turnovers, but another need area for the Jets that this new culture, this new brand can bring is in penalties. You've heard Aaron Glenn talk about the kind of violence they want to play with, but also being smart, right? And let's put some stats on that one as well. As I said earlier in the week, the Jets struggled with turnovers last year. They had only 7 interceptions in 2024. Only 3 teams had fewer interceptions than the Jets: the Jaguars, the Giants, and the Browns. Notably, none of those teams made the playoffs. They were all drafting in the top 10 along with the Jets, right? So there is a correlation there. The Jets only had 10 fumble recoveries last year. So the 17 takeaways they had as total from interceptions and fumbles, only 17, only 6 teams had fewer takeaways: Miami, the Giants, Vegas, the Browns, the Pats, and the Jags, okay? Again, these are not playoff teams that we are talking about. There is a correlation between turning the ball over and making the playoffs, being a strong team. But like I said, another area that the Jets really hope to improve in 2025 is in penalties. The Jets also struggle in penalties mightily. Literally, they were the worst in the league with 8.1 penalties a game against them, 66.7 yards of penalties given up, letting their opponents kind of march down the field on penalty yards. Both of those were the worst in the NFL. How many times did you see it last year, right? 3rd and 9, we think we get off the field, and then all of a sudden there's a penalty for the opposition to extend the drive. Or we make a play. We think we're getting a chunk play, but it is called back for a holding call or something silly like that. We think we are moving the ball, and we have a ridiculous pre-snap penalty. We were literally the worst in the NFL in terms of penalties and in terms of penalty yardage. So in addition to trying to take the ball away, remember, Glenn has talked about this brand as violent and aggressive, but also smart players, football IQ, intelligence, and hopefully that can help with the idea of penalties as well. There is nowhere to go but up when it comes to the penalties, and I do think this kind of discipline that Glenn is instilling will be a benefit for that. Another thing that you keep on hearing in this new Jets brand, this new era and new regime with Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn is the idea of versatility. We have continued to talk about versatility with a lot of players, whether it's a free agent signing like Brandon Stevens, who can play corner or safety, or a guy like Josh Myers, who can play center or help with guard, or if it's a draft pick like a Malachi Moore, right, who is able to, from that star position in Alabama, be like a nickel corner, play safety. That kind of versatility, how it helps the defense under Steve Wilkes, help bring guys from different places, disguise coverages. Well, that continues with an under-the-radar signing and a guy that we have not talked about here on Jets Latest yet, because quite frankly, it was an under-the-radar signing in what is not known as a premium position. I'm talking about the fullback that the Jets signed, Andrew Beck. Let's talk a little bit about him. They signed him to a 1-year, $1.34 million deal all the way back in March, okay, early in free agency. I think it's important to note that, like Josh Reynolds, Beck played for Denver when Muji was there in the front office staff. So Muji has experience, knows what he is getting in Andrew Beck, okay? He's, modest stats, right? Played in 70 games, 22 starts. He has 25 catches, 214 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Here's what I think is the interesting part, and it goes back to that versatility that they are intentionally looking for here with the green and white, okay? He played tight end his first 4 seasons. Then he switched to the fullback. And I think that is the important part. Since 2023, look, he's lined up in line over 32% of the time. In the backfield, 51% of the time. In the slot, 12% of the time. And out wide, just over 4% of the time. You see his receiving stats right there. Actually, he's caught most of the targets, right? Quarterbacks have a good passer rating when targeting him. Remember, we talked about Justin Fields also and his success targeting the tight end. Only 2 drops. Remember, we talked about the sure-handed nature of him and some of the other guys like Mason Taylor, like Josh Reynolds, like Garrett Wilson in terms of avoiding the drops. And we talked about Yak. He averages 6 yards after the catch per completion. That is not bad for a big man that's about 225 pounds, right? So the reason I bring this up, though, again, is that versatility, right? He's listed as a fullback. He's going to be able to do that. But what I find interesting is his experience as a tight end. If you look at the tight end roster, yes, we have praised the kind of blocking ability of a Mason Taylor, right? But Stone Smart and Jeremy Ruckert, those are receiving tight ends, right? So there is a pathway, I believe, for Beck to be able to be in certain situations lining up as a blocking tight end. And that kind of versatility is definitely important and definitely why I believe Muji and Glenn targeted him, especially with the experience he has with Muji. Muji saw him in Denver, knows what he can do, and likes what he can do. We have targeted a lot of guys that have been with either Glenn or Muji at other spots, whether it be at Denver or in Detroit. But again, the versatility coming to pass, right? The intentionality of the Jets move. Moving in silence, not trying to make the splashy moves, getting guys that fit. You hear Aaron Glenn and Muji talk about this all the time, that fit for what they want to do scheme-wise and also fit for what they are trying to build in the building character-wise. And Andrew Beck is not a guy that we've talked about, but it really goes across the entire roster. Heck, we're even bringing in youth and competition and a clean slate at special teams. Remember, moving on from Morstead and Zerline as well. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Remember to watch these videos, like these videos, subscribe to the Jets Latest channel. Thank you so much for people who have. We have been growing the subscribers, and I really, really appreciate it. Continue to hit me up in the comments. I try to engage with you and go back and forth and co-sign or give extra feedback on what I am seeing in the comments. I love talking about the green and white, the Jets, 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 Jets. And if you want to hear more of me talking, the spitting statistician, I am also the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on Sirius XM channel 87, the fantasy channel, where we do more than just talk the Jets. So if you're a fantasy player, if you're a sports bettor, we got you covered, okay? Fantasy football on the horizon, fantasy baseball, NBA, NHL playoffs are ongoing. FTN is a great website. They do a lot of great content. We also have a lot of great data and kind of simulations, edges to become a better sports bettor and a better fantasy player. And if you want to hit me up also on social media, on Twitter at X at Spittin' Speeds, engage with me in the comments. It is an exciting time to be a fan of the green and white. Tell a friend to tell a friend about Jets Latest, because that is where you get the latest on the Jets, 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 Jets. That'll do it for this episode. We'll see you next time. We out of here.